some thinking and some maneuvering, but he's done both of those. Jeff Schwab, our PE teacher, worked with the other PE teachers in the district to do a virtual field day. Carrie Ewan has worked with the PTC and local bookstores and the library, the Snow Library, to do the McCord Awards and the Reading Awards. So students are continuing to be recognized for their reading for the year and get a little gift certificates for that. So some of these things we weren't sure would happen when we went into the remote world. And it really is because of the efforts of these teachers to just be persistent in providing the opportunities for children. I also just want to catch up a little bit. You've heard me talk about some of the inventive ways people have been working at their grade levels. And this past week, we saw a culmination of some of these activities that they've been working on this during the last term. I want to commend Sirius Farber and Alan Peterson. They've done an incredible job of maintaining a really nice culture and climate for their fifth grade. As you know, fifth grade, the last year here, it's kind of a unique year. And I think that they've gone above and beyond to maintain their culture and their sense of fifth grade ownership and transition. But they worked with their students to do a virtual science fair. So our fifth grade students were each matched with the classroom, and they presented their science fairs to each of the classrooms during their virtual sessions. So they were in essence being teachers themselves. And when you think about all the skills the teachers had to learn to create and do an instructional model in this venue, our fifth grade students did the same thing. They had presentations, they presented to younger students, they took questions and answers. And they did an amazing job. And the fifth grade teachers had to do a lot of coordinating, and they accompanied their students to each one of those sessions. But they were nice models to look up to by all the younger children and their previous teachers. Our fourth grade teachers have continued state fairs, only now they use Book Creator, and students have created their own representations of their state. So if you've remember at OES, we've always done a presentation in a shoebox along with the PowerPoint, but this was all virtual, and they presented to their classmates. And I don't think anything was lost. And in fact, I think a lot of 21st century skills were gained in this process. Third grade students there was not all the students, but those who chose to continued with their integrated study of Pleasant Bay. And I was fortunate enough to sit in on their presentation. And they worked collaboratively, so teams of children created each an individual presentation using Book Creator on some aspect of Pleasant Bay. And they did it to an authentic audience. And during that presentation, we were told we have going to be lucky enough to get the Pleasant Bay grant again next year. But again, these are just incredible opportunities to see what children can do and continue their learning and their research. Children in Book Creator not only, wrote, they illustrated pictures, they took videos of their visits to Pleasant Bay, they inserted pictures, they used graphics, they used coding, they used all kinds of different mediums. So each book that they presented virtually really represented their own interests in creativity and knowledge. And they are on, I believe, one of our websites. I believe it's the Mrs. Stevers website and the third grade website. So you can actually see them. Unfortunately, you can't see the kids presenting them, but our second grade team has been rather inventive. They had a virtual field trip to our fire department. John Stever went over, and the fire chief showed them around the fire department and took questions and answers. It was an extension of what they had been learning about community helpers. And I thought that was just a nice opportunity to use our remote experience in a different way. They've also Mrs. Bavino is doing a 7:30 bedtime story for children. They're coming in their pajamas and their stuffies and listening to a story from Mrs. Bavino before heading off to bed. She's done 2 of them, we'll do 1 more. And the second grade students have also done a little research and presentation on dinosaurs. So second grade didn't let go of their famous dinosaur project. They had to adapt it a little bit this year, but they still managed to do it. First grade and kindergarten have been having dance parties and funky hair day parties as a way to celebrate and be together. So it's just, and I also want to recognize Nina Keating and Dawn Steber. I cannot tell you how much that they have done with each and every student and many, many families to support everyone in this different remote world. But they've also used a lot of what we know about good teaching and learning to promote great opportunities for children for learning. And they have just been working nonstop individually and collectively, and they've got great ideas for next year. They're in planning mode, but they have really been just stellar. So we are organizing, we're preparing this week for students to come by and return materials that they've used, and also to pick up end of year materials and have an opportunity to wave goodbye to teachers. And in many ways it's ceremonial. And on Friday at 10 o'clock, 5th grade families and students will come by to pick up their promotion certificate and have their name be called and get back in their car. And our staff will be here 6 feet apart, cheering them on. So we have managed, I think, to preserve the things that are important and maintain our community and our connection to each other. And I think it is because of the incredible efforts of each and every one of our staff. And our families who have taken on an enormous role this year. It's been a huge burden for them because it's a lot of work to try to even find the spot sometimes for a child to do their work that's quiet and connected. And I think that we have to recognize how much families this year have dedicated to the success of their children's education. So that's my update.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I thought it was, yes, Hank?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, are all of the report cards going to go out in a normal way with the grading, or will it be simplified this term?
What a great question. The report cards will be distributed this week while the children pick up their belongings. And because we had a very different term, all teachers gave a very extensive narrative reflecting on the students' work and attendance at meetings and demonstration and execution of learning challenge activities. So they're very personalized. And I think that they recognize the work that children did this term.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Elaine, just to follow up on that, so it wasn't a pass-fail, it was, were they actually given, some kind of rating similar to what they had in the first and second terms, or just the narrative?
Only the narrative to reflect their efforts, their participation, their engagement, all of the opportunities, how much they were able to or not able to. Everyone did as much as they could given their circumstance.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really critical because next year's teacher will at least be able to see, how they progressed, even though there's not that rating on the progress report, so that they know how engaged they were during this time. So thank you.
I think that's helpful, but I think that next year I'm very, very confident that as professionals we'll be working individually with every child to support them to have the appropriate learning that they deserve.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Conrad?
So thank you, Gail. Appreciate it. And can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So I think living in a district, you can appreciate anywhere and everywhere I go, the question of the day is, so what's next year going to look like? And I can tell you at this point, there is a lot of questions that still need to be answered, and a lot of discussions amongst the commissioner with the superintendents relative to guidelines that the state is going to put in place. I can tell you that we had a robust conversation Friday with the commissioner, and we anticipate that this coming Wednesday, we are led to believe that we'll get more information that will give us the direction to begin looking at our plans going forward. My plan is to send out to all board members after the meeting with the commissioner the highlights of that discussion. And I can tell you that when we finish each of our superintendent meetings, remember this is a closed site, he has typically told us not to share this with anyone else at this point, and we'll be raising the question that our board needs this information now to work with us as we plan going forward. I can tell you that I think that once we hear from the commissioner, we're going to begin working with some of our groups of people that we've have volunteering to help us from a parent standpoint, as well as a number of officials at different levels. And we'll be beginning to try to figure out what it is that we're going to be able to do and not do. And I don't think at this point it's secret information from last Friday's meeting, but it can be anywhere. And this is not going to give you an answer. What I'm about to say, it's very broad, is that we could see something that involves our buildings. We could see something that involves a blended model, and we're going to see something that possibly has remote learning. So it's about as wide as you can keep it at this point. And I'm anticipating that we're going to need to survey our parents, and I would assume a couple of weeks into the summer break to begin to understand the patterns that parents are thinking about, from anywhere from transportation and how kids would be coming from that household to us, whether it be transportation from the district or parents dropping their child off, to whether or not they plan to return to the program or they have other plans, if they could share that with us. So I plan to, on Thursday, talk with each of our faculties separately throughout the day with a conversation about where we've been and where we need to go, and how summer is going to be far different than any of us ever experienced in our careers. And we very well could need time with some of our staff members to assist in this planning, and some other programs that we're thinking of trying to offer to our students, including the elementary principals have been spending a great deal of time talking about should we run an August academic program for students who have fallen behind. And I think there's enough interest that we would be continuing that discussion sometime this week when we meet as a group and see what that means going forward. Obviously, we have our special education program going forward, and Coretti is continuing to set that plan in place. And it would be a combination of remote learning, and we think that we'll have a few students coming into the buildings, as long as we can stay to the general guidelines of 6 feet from each other, and nobody comes to school sick, and so forth and so forth. So that's that you can plan on. Other than that, other than that is not leaving much time for other things, quite honestly. But we are moving forward. I continue to meet with the union leadership, Ann and Mark. We meet on Tuesday mornings, and We've been averaging at least 2 to 3 hours and sometimes 4-hour discussions. As you all are aware, we operate with a union and a contract that needs to be followed. And there is interpretations on a number of issues that we discuss and try to find common ground so that we can move forward. At this time, Giovanna is leading our negotiations with our union for the high school custodians and the Brewster custodians. And we are real close to getting started with our secretaries and our ed assistants at this point. Everything's now in motion. And we anticipate right after school finishes up that we'll go back to the table under the leadership of Gail on our side and Mark on the teacher side to have teacher negotiations right away and see if we can find solutions to our questions and issues and settle a number of different items that are on the table. The other piece that I would tell you is that we are spending quite a bit of time looking at our equipment needs relative to this COVID virus. And we're trying to gear up, understanding, and Gio is in the business department is taking the lead with working with the towns to understand how we filter in the needs that we have to keep our kids safe coming back in this coming fall, including masks and a variety of pieces of equipment. And then from there, we want to continue to watch the guidelines. We want to be very careful with what we choose to purchase so that it is absolutely going to be used in the future. They have backed down, for instance, from taking everybody's temperature, deciding that wasn't going to be helpful going forward. And I'm sorry to say that some of my colleagues have already bought some of that equipment and it's not needed. So these are the sort of things that are difficult to stay on top of and make sure that we don't slip and make any mistakes. The other piece I would say is the standards for us to come together haven't changed all that much. Nobody is to come to work sick, and no student should do likewise into the building. And we have the 6-foot area and masks. I must tell you that talking to numbers of parents and getting emails, having masks worn by our students at the very earliest ages is not sitting well with parents. And so we're going to be watching to see indeed what comes out relative to what the commissioner has to say and the state relative to the rules that we have to play by. We also walk hand in hand with our health agents because they play a major role in our towns in terms of what can open, what can't open. And going forward from that point, we want the health agents to sign off on some things, particularly if we're going to bring kids in for that August program, that we have a plan in place that they are comfortable with moving forward. Let me stop there because I got yet another whole page here. Let me just I'll take one more, I guess, and then I'll take some questions if you have them. We're moving forward with what I believe to be a robust analysis of our technology program. Barbara Lavoie, as you know, has retired at the end of the year, and we're looking at how that program could potentially work together relative to remote learning if indeed we find ourselves with somewhere between 12 to 15 students at a grade level at the elementary level who are either not coming back in at this point or are seeking out remote learning, that we might very well look to have one teacher taking on a group of kids across the region, not necessarily just their building, if those numbers make sense. So that's well underway as well. So let me stop and see if you have any specific questions that I can help you with as we go forward.
Ginger,
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, you said that it was decided that temperatures would not be taken?
Yeah.
And who was that decided that? Was that the commission or the
So
state?
the commissioner is very quick to say that everything that he is reporting to us is based on medical information they're receiving. And so it's coming right, this came directly from the commission. So, and I think ultimately the commissioner is getting some direction from the governor. He never, ever wants to get ahead of any information that the governor is about to put out. And there is some fear that once the superintendents have it, not to share with the media or the press, to put the word on the street before they do it. So that's where much of my information is coming from.
Okay, thank you.
other questions? Hank?
Yeah, a couple, one on the union leadership meetings. Is there a reason why they're going on so long this year compared to the normal calendar that they're usually settled by this time? Are there major issues that are related to remote learning that maybe were not there last time?
So we shut down once we got into the virus. So that the last third of the year, we haven't been meeting at that point. There was some discussion about, at one point, would we look at the COLA and settle for the COLA number this year, and then go back to the table to take care of some of the language issues. So there's been a number of options to it. And I think both sides at some point here just recently decided we need to push through. We're really focused on a number. I wish I could tell you, Hank, quite honestly, but it's not for me to put on the street of what we're negotiating. But I think we're off to a very good start. I think both sides have put their key points on the table, and I think both sides believe that it's going to be excellent discussion on the key points, and we're going to try and find common ground on those items. So I'm optimistic we're going to be fine, and the virus has just got in our way.
Hank, I think that your question was in reference to the meetings that Tom's been having every week. Was that?
Yeah, you said the
Well,
union leadership
Oh.
meetings ongoing, but I thought they've been ongoing for the last 6 months or so.
So Gail, if you don't mind, I'll speak to the issue.
Yeah.
So our work weekly has to do with certain situations, and quite honestly, when we rolled out that plan right after April vacation, remember we sent you a huge packet of information. There was some pushback by some staff members of some pieces of that they didn't feel like they had to do it, and so that took quite a bit of time in terms of back and forth, in terms of understanding. For instance, in the contract is language that you're not to go into a personal home by yourself and work with a student. And so the question came in, for instance, relative to that particularly for ed assistants in this case, that if you go in remotely into the home and work with a student one-on-one, is that in violation of the contract? Because are you in their house when you go in remotely? And so these were all discussions that took time to think through. I can tell you another one was that we wanted to go forward with some flexibility in terms of our staff. And we're making the case that in getting our contracts out, and the contracts are out at this point, that we were asking that in terms of our teachers, for instance, that instead of saying exactly what subject they teach and at what grade level and what building, could we just simply take the nervousness away for our staff in terms of getting a contract, and just put down that on the contract for each of our teachers, it just simply says it's a teacher's contract. And we think it has built some flexibility in there, depending upon how this plays out in terms of what models we're involved in when we get back in September. And And so that's just a taste of some of the issues that we are talking about.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important that, as you said, Tom, that we have flexibility in the contract, that it's not specific, because we don't know what the mode is going to be. And if you're going to be hired as a teacher, you have to be able to teach in many different modes, and some
Yep.
virtually, and to be trained in those modes if you feel inadequate. But otherwise, you have to resign. And I think we need to know this ahead of time, so come end of August, we don't get stuck and say, these were short of teachers because 2 or 3 of them or something have decided they don't want to continue.
Exactly
And,
right.
I'm glad you're going through with that, and Gail also, that we move ahead with that.
Tom, I just have a follow-up question on the summer program. Primarily, that will be for children who are on IEPs who would be in danger of regressing.
So it depends upon their level, quite honestly. And Coretti, of course, has been running our summer program for many, many years. That's all in motion. We had a long conversation about this. I can tell you that staffing is always a problem in this summer
Mhm.
program for our special needs students. And we're going to be able to put this together, patch it together, to get teachers to volunteer to teach during the summer. We have a building in our system that no teacher in the building volunteered to do anything for any of these programs this year. And so that puts pressure on, in many cases, as you know, Gail, required programs that we have to run.
Right.
And I think we've had this conversation before, and this is something we'll see whether it gets back on the table or not. But I left a meeting with Ann, a long meeting this afternoon, and maybe the best way is to go to a 220 contract, that when we need special education or ed assistants who are working with these students, that we identify them as a 220-day contract that ties them up for the regular year and also the summer work that we need done. We need it. It has to be done. And poor Ann is, for years, every year, she doesn't know, almost down to the day when we start, do we have enough staffing that we need? And the other piece of it, Gail, is that we're talking about students who are regular ed students who have fallen behind for some reasons. And
That was what I was getting at.
Yeah,
Are there options of including some of those children that we know have fallen behind for whatever reason to be included?
That's right. So that's
Okay.
the model we're now discussing as a group of elementary principals.
Okay.
Keith's at the table, of course, because he's going to be a principal again for us this coming year, and Patty Grenier and myself. And so we're hopeful to be able to put something together. And I'm very, very concerned about gaps for kids, and so on the principals. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions?
Just a very quick clarification, please.
Yes.
I thought that we had gotten an email that Dr. Coretti was retiring at the end of this year. Has that changed?
No, I think she's going to stay at least until the program gets off and going. She's been excellent in terms of working with Mary, and they're getting together again tomorrow to go over some things. And so, no, she'll be retiring, but we're going to use as much of her expertise as we can, as we even begin to plan for a year from now. And that was our discussion today about how do we have a controlled group of teachers that have to work in our summer program as well as the day program in the school year. So, and that's where we're at. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to the FY20 budget review. Giovanna?
Thank you. We'll go directly to page 9 of the report. The prior month balance was $3,298. We were able to put back into the budget $11,026, leaving a balance of $14,324. We applied for extraordinary relief. We received extraordinary relief, so we made some reclassifications out of the operating fund directly to the extraordinary relief funds that were given to us by the state, and those funds need to be expended in this fiscal year. So that's what we did. So I'm going to go through and highlight the items that were over $1,000 movement since last month's reporting. Page 6 of the report, towards the middle of the page, line item 3075, the special needs out of district transportation. We spent $2,190, and those are final invoices from the collaborative for the out of district transportation. Also on this page further down, 3093, the cafeteria other, we spent $1,502 since last month's reporting, and that is to cover the unpaid balances from students in their accounts for purchases in the cafeteria. And we have to cover those at the end of the year. And then finally on page 9, the last item on the report, line item 3098, the special needs tuition collaborative. Here we, like I said before, we had reclassifications to the extraordinary relief funds to cover expenses in the operating budget. So we reclassified those directly to the extraordinary relief funds that we had received. So the current balance that we have is $14,324. Typically, we come back to the school committee with a spend down plan as there's a little bit of funds here. Principal Pender and I reviewed it, and we will utilize those funds to prepay for preschool for next year. As you may recall, we had asked the town for some money back before all this happened with COVID-19 because of the second student that we had. And as a result of the closure of the school, we were able to cover those expenses, and we didn't require those funds. We had asked for $31,800, and as a result of the shutdown due to the COVID-19, we had savings in the substitute line items as well as in the utility line items. Any questions on the expenditure report?
Hank?
Yeah, a few of them, but one question on the insurance on the water leak. Did we ever get paid back for that? Because we show a negative variance in the building contracted services equipment for, you say, HVAC generator, sprinkler systems, repairs and services. I thought we had an insurance plan that we were going to get paid back for that. That leak, the water leak we had about 6 months ago.
Most of those expenses were covered by the town, so we haven't had any revenue from it, but we really haven't had any expenses from it. The only thing that we will need to do for next year is just replenish some of the supplies. But the town took care of all of the costs for that.
Oh, but why are we in the negative of $3,000 on that?
Is that account 3056, Hank? Is
Yes.
that what you're referring to?
3056, yes.
Well, we only had budgeted 15,000. There were additional expenses that occurred during the year that caused us to go negative in that line item. And
Okay, so,
that sometimes happens.
yeah, they weren't related to the water leak. That was my question. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you
And
very much. Any
one
other
other-
questions?
A couple other questions. What natural gas is so high? Is that basically because everything's turned off at the school except for the kitchen? What are we using? $900 in natural gas in the last 3 or 4 months.
That's for the last, what we did was we looked at what we've expended to date and then projected for the last month. I mean, we still have the cafeteria operating. I mean, I think they use natural gas on their stoves, but that's just for the last month of the school year.
Okay, yeah, because that's very little gas used for cooking. Okay, I just was saying we've saved some monies, but we're still getting a lot of expenses for electricity and gas, even though you would think with the school closed down for the last 4 months, you could turn off the electricity in most cases and save even more, but maybe the bills haven't come in yet.
That's probably true.
And then one other question, I thought we talked about several months ago, the maintenance of the grounds and the cutting of the grass and things, that we were going to ask the town to do that since they have all that equipment and we don't have to contract that out. Is anybody doing anything on that?
The town does maintain, they do all the grounds.
But why do we still, now we're in a negative $1,600 there for the contracting maintenance of the grounds, it looks like.
Can you identify the line
Under
item?
3055.
That is for the building. Those are contracted services building. It's not the grounds, it's the building.
Well, where are the grounds on here? I thought they were.
The
the same.
grounds are right above it, 3054. We budgeted 4,000. We've spent $3,379 to date. We've got $225 expended. We have a positive
Yeah.
variance of
But
$396.
isn't the town doing that work? Why do we have to pay a private contractor to do that?
I'll have to go back and look at the detail, Hank. I can't tell
And
you.
I just thought we
as
talked
to
about,
what we budget for.
It's a variety of things. So it's not necessarily the cutting of the grass.
Yeah.
And we can get that back. We can get that for you. Exactly.
yeah, I just think we have lots of these little things we can say. We don't have to use fertilizer. We don't have to be maintaining sprinkler systems and things like that on our athletic fields.
I can tell you what that encompasses, Hank. Irrigation, pest control, maintenance and any house calls, playground inspection. So that's what's in that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like the irrigation we talked about, we don't need to, we should just turn that off, and we, even when we get a drought, there's no need for that, but it just, we're not having a public park, but okay. I'm just looking, I think there's more that we can save sometimes with looking at smaller things.
Any other questions? All right. Are you prepared to go on? Oh, Josh, did you have a question?
But yeah, a quick question in it. I know the next agenda item is a spending plan, but I wanted to just clarify that we ended with a surplus of about 13,000 or so, and we're prepaying some pre-K with that. Is that true? I was just wondering if there was any consideration in or ability to send that back to the town, just knowing that we're probably entering a year with remarkably low receipts for the town of Orleans, and I think any effort to be a team player in helping out the town's bottom line would be probably seen as a good move, but maybe it all eventually works itself out anyhow, that if we're prepaying, then we'll be spending less money next year. But that was my only question, was if we'd thought about maybe sending it back.
So Josh, there was an amount of money that was going to go on the warrant for the spring in the amount of $31,800 that we were requesting for a special needs student. And Giovanna asked that this be removed from the town warrant and that it was going to be covered in the operating cost. So it's not like we have not given any money to the town. Well, we didn't give them money, but we were requesting money, and then we indicated that we would cover it within our operating budget. I just wanted to point that out. So.
I think Tom had a question.
No, I think Gail, you answered that beautifully, because at one point we were anticipating the town had to find that money for us. And so that did come directly out of our operating budget to offset for the town in terms of their problems.
So is there any further discussion on Josh's point? All right. are you prepared to discuss the spending plan? Is that Giovanna or Elaine? Or is that something that you need to discuss further? Is it going to go to prepay the preschool?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's, I see that as a separate item on the agenda. That's why I'm asking. Okay. Is that something we need to vote on or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I need a motion to approve the expenditure of the balance, the operating budget balance, and would it be exactly that, or do we determine that in June?
No, well, we'll determine once everything settles and if there's any other invoices that come through that we have to pay. But so long as you approve that any overages, any variances in the operating budget will go to pay for preschool for fiscal 21.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion that any overage in our operating budget would go towards the prepayment of preschool in the 2021 budget.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Sassy? All right. Are there any questions or comments? Hank?
Yeah, what are we presently using any funds for preschool? I thought that was still all done privately.
We have community friends that pay to attend, but the rest comes from the respective school's budget.
And how much has that presently been?
Right now, the fiscal 20 budget preschool costs budgeted for $82,615 in fiscal 20.
Yeah.
For the next fiscal year, next year's tuition is $141,877.
So if we have, what I'm getting at, if we have more than the 14,000, which we might when we get money from the Cape Collaborative for the end of the year, that can go through that preschool. So we might be giving them more than the 14,000. Would that be correct in my thinking?
If there's any credits received from the collaborative, those funds will go directly to the bottom line, and whatever is left over most likely will go to pre-K, but I don't have those numbers just yet.
Yeah. Did you get any expectation of when you'll be getting them?
They're working on it. I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
When-
so
What-
Josh?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do we feel good as far as financing for any remote learning expenses for next year? Just knowing that at the cost of and scarcity of some of those supplies, whether this would put us in a position to not have some cash on hand to buy those in the next few weeks or months.
I do believe, Josh, that if we prepay the preschool, that would free up funds from that account, which would allow us to review it in the actual 2021 budget.
So we're just parking it in preschool for the time being.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. All right, so I have a motion to use the overage for, to prepay the preschool. I have a second. We've had discussion and questions. All those in favor indicate by raising your hand.
Do
One,
we need to, do all these votes need to be roll call votes on remote sessions? Is that true?
Do we need a roll call vote on that?
You don't, they advise you to do it, but you're seeing hands, everybody's hands,
Yeah.
right, Gail?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I can do a roll call vote if you want.
It's just cleaner, but that you don't, it's
Oh.
fine either way. Go ahead. I do it, I would do roll call. Go ahead.
Okay, so Hank, yay or
Yes.
nay? Yes.
Yes, yay.
Darcy? Yes, okay. Josh
Yes.
and Ginger,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well, so it's unanimous. All right, so I was a little behind on the new protocol. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to hear Sassy's voice.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the FY21 budget review. I'm not clear what that is.
The fiscal 21, we just wanted everyone to know that all of the towns are going under the 1/12 budget for the Department of Revenue, and we fall under the town, so we'll also be on a 1/12 budget until which time the budget is approved at town meeting. So because the town meetings haven't happened yet, the Department of Revenue says 1/12. Now, Orleans meeting is this month, so if there's a quorum, then if they vote the budget in, then it would be a non-issue for Orleans Elementary School. But the region is working, will be working on a 1/12 budget along with the other 3-member towns as their town meetings aren't scheduled till the fall.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding Giovanna's explanation? Okay, thank you. Meeting schedule, Mr. Conrad?
Well, we have every reason to think that we're going to stay on our regular schedule all the way through the summer. I guess the only question that we've been having a discussion with the board members is what times will work for you in those 2 months? Is there a need to change that time, or how does that work for you?
Well, I saw on the meeting schedule that there was a recommendation of a 9 o'clock time. And so I guess I want to put that out there to people. Does that work for people, or do we need to stick with the 3:30 time?
For us, it would be, it's helpful, but
I,
It would be helpful to me if it was earlier.
Yeah,
me too.
Josh, yes? Ginger?
Yeah,
I'm
9
fine with
o'clock.
9.
Yeah, we all
All right.
said,
So do
9
we need to
o'clock.
vote on that, or are you okay with that, Tom?
9 o'clock, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. You guys
Yeah.
are too good. That's great. Thank you.
All
9
right.
is it?
So that's 9 o'clock on July 20th and August 17th. And
we
at
need-
this point, it looks like it will continue to be remote meetings until further notice.
Do we need to run those by the town as far as access to remote recording and stuff like that?
Yeah, we'll double
Just
check.
make sure
with
they're
it,
not
but I
double
think
booked.
it's fine. That's, and we've talked to a couple of town halls. It doesn't appear as if we're going to get out of remote meetings this summer, so plan on remote.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to reports and information. The Cape Cod Collaborative. Hank, have you had another meeting?
yeah, we had a very long meeting, over 3 hours last week. And there's many issues. I don't know how many you want to know about, but the main one seems to be dealing with the payroll protection program and the $1.936 million that's sitting in the Rockland Bank. TD Bank awarded that to the collaborative, and they're concerned that whether we're eligible, even though we have the money, but not a dollar has been spent. And this, we brought this up again, and when we're actually going to spend the money, because we're paying interest on that at 1%, and it sits in the Rockland Bank. And Paul indicated in a letter that I believe went out to all the superintendents last week, or will go out this week, concerning this issue of whether we're willing to take the risk if somewhere down the line, a year or so from now, somebody in the SBA or in Congress says we weren't eligible because we're a 501c3. And we hope that that money would be then distributed to all of the school districts, prorated in an appropriate way, which would be a considerable amount for Orleans and Nauset District to get at that time. So I don't know whether whether Tom has received that letter or not. Have you, Tom?
I haven't got the letter yet, but Paul's in the meetings every week, so we've been, he tries to keep us up to breast on those weekly meetings, but this is an interesting one to pay attention to.
Well, we need to pay attention to it, and many of us are very concerned that what's the degree of risk? If we've received it already, like everyone else has it throughout the United States, and the Cirrus funds or other funds that the schools have received or are going to receive in the different towns, we don't know how much. So this can be a boon for us, especially with the transportation, such a large amount. Because at the meeting last week with MASC, the Mass Association of School Committees, that I was on, I think it was Thursday, nobody knew whether we're going to get any more money from for transportation in Chapter 70 and the circuit breakers. As far as we know, DESE hasn't made that decision, and our legislature hasn't passed the budget. But that happens in Massachusetts quite often. So the new overhaul in the Student Opportunity Act, if we don't know what we're getting from Chapter 70, we don't know what we're getting from circuit breaker, we don't know what we're getting for transportation, it makes it extremely difficult for Giovanna and yourselves to decide where we go. And so that was one of the issues. The other is dealing with opening school in the summer for the special needs, the STAR program especially. And they're talking about hoping to bring maybe some of the students back, since it's such a small number. We have less than 50, maybe we'll have well less. And we did approve the ability for some of the faculty, the staff and the teachers to provide private care during the school year, which was prohibited before. So we took that out of the collaborative program to allow them to work privately with the students and their needs. And I thought that that was a unanimous vote. The other thing dealing with the Plymouth is coming in with next year with 230. I'm sorry, they're just coming in to join. The ASLP program has been postponed until the spring of 2021 with 230 students. So that's a disappointment, that we were hoping that could go remotely a little bit during the summer, but that's been called off. And they're still haven't decided on a new school, looking for that site still. So that's going on, not very expeditiously at this time. And the Osterville Elementary School building, that'll be renewed again, even though they want $150,000 up front for maintenance. And I think that's, oh, one other thing came up and I wasn't sure why, Tom, Nauset District and the Lower Cape districts decided not to participate in the Modern Teacher remote learning professional development. There's a lot of talk on promoting the professional development and getting teachers better work remotely. And I'm not quite sure, Paul didn't know why the Lower Cape districts, which I assume is Monomoy and Nauset, have not decided to join.
It's my understanding that at our most recent meeting, there was only one district that was even seriously considering joining that initiative. So for us, we're looking for a robust summer program, professional development wise, with our people, and quite honestly, we're in a position to be in with a one-to-one model all the way down through our third grade, and our hover cams, and we have some good equipment. We just need to get better at what we're doing, and I think we can do that within our own system at this point. And
Okay.
it's not a perfect fit for us by any means.
Yeah, very good. The Tower Foundation grant all that money went towards that program and the modern teacher program. So we're not participating in that. And then the virtual high school will also continue. We voted to continue that. I'm not sure how many people from Nauset District are participating in virtual high school, but
We've been in that program, Hank, probably 15 to 18 years.
Yeah.
And we actually have two programs that we offer kids.
okay. Anyway, so that's in a nutshell what's going on. There's just a lot of seriousness because we know the special needs kids are not being met. Their needs are not being met. And until they get a one-on-one, our teachers back in the classroom, they're not going to be met most likely.
Any,
Thank
any questions for Hank? Thanks, Hank. PTC, Sassy. You have to unmute. There you go.
I'm like in the dark. I do not have a report currently.
Okay, that's okay. School
Sorry.
council. Oh, but did you want to add something?
No,
Okay,
We'd like to hear your
Hi,
voice.
Sassy, how are you?
we know that you're there now.
I know. I feel like I'm illumined like a vampire in the back. This is not
No.
professional. That's why I'm quiet. I'm going away.
Given everything that's going on, it's, we all feel that way sometimes, so.
The vampire thing or the
No, like we're out there. Elaine, how about the school council?
Yes, I just wanted to speak to the fact that I have met with PTC board the last twice now remotely. And they've just been as accommodating and helpful as they can. They supported the reading awards, like I had said, and they're really positive and helpful and ready to do whatever that they can for next year. They've established a budget for next year for our teachers, which is wonderful. And they want to work closely with parents and programs so that everyone just has what they need for success as we move into the next year. And that might look a little different. So we're all kind of waiting to see what our model will be so that we can adequately support it through any kind of initiatives that we need to. And they've been just fabulous about meeting with me and trying to think out of the box themselves.
All right.
So it's been great. And school council, we've met twice. We should be ready to present the school improvement plan in July at July's meeting, but the recent state of events has brought a few more things to be priorities than had been. Quite honestly, when we reflect on our school improvement plan the next couple of years, there are things that we want to make sure that we're addressing fairly explicitly with some nice learning goals there to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to the absolute best, highest expectations we can for our school. So, but I have to commend to the members of the school council for meeting with me remotely and doing some revisions and some kind of thinking and reflecting about just the state of our world right now and what that means for our school and our community.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Elaine? All right. Policy Subcommittee, Josh, anything new?
No new meetings, no new news.
Okay. Negotiation Subcommittee, we are waiting until school ends and then we're looking to reconvene this subcommittee. MASC is doing, Massachusetts Association of School Committees is actually doing a Zoom meeting this evening, preparing for collective bargaining in an era of COVID and a financial crisis. And I've signed up to listen in on that. So it'll be very interesting to see what they have to share. Substance Abuse Mental Health Task Force.
Well, nothing to report. We had a meeting scheduled in March and that was of course canceled and I've heard nothing since. So for our July meeting, I will check in with Ann Coretti and see what's going forward with that because I think people are going to need that more than ever in this complicated opening and if we have one. So.
Okay, thank you.
Next month. I mean, what kind we have, like, we're gonna have something, but who knows what.
We are going to have something. We just don't know what it looks like. Strategic Plan Subcommittee, we've completed our work and we've submitted the plan and a follow-up letter to highlight the fact that we are in definitely a time of uncertainty. And I think there are other issues that need to be resolved before this strategic plan can be rolled out. And I expect that we'll see that sometime in September. All right. Approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 18th, 20?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, I just have one, I don't know if it's a correction or if I misspoke, but in the negotiation subcommittee, the notes say that I indicated that they have a meeting scheduled. And I think we were attempting to set up a meeting, so I don't know if I misspoke or if it could be corrected because I misspoke, Ian, but if you could do that, I would appreciate that. Because we're trying to find a time and we have not been able to, I mean, we're moving towards a time that we can work with, so. All right, so approval of minutes. I heard so moved. Is that Josh?
Hank
Yes, I
moved
said
it.
so.
Okay,
moved.
so moved. With the revision, Hank?
Yes.
Okay, and then I need a second.
Second,
Okay. Any other questions or corrections? All right, I need to take a roll call vote. Hank, do you approve?
Aye.
Sassy,
Aye.
Josh,
aye.
Ginger,
Aye.
and I also approve. All right. We have the payment of the bills that was sent to us by Rhonda this morning. And I know that 2 of us have approved them. So if you haven't, if you go on and look at that and approve that. All right. And then we have a motion to adjourn.
Also, just a reminder, I believe Saturday is town meeting in Orleans. So
It is.
That's true. I'm
Find
sorry.
some-
I meant,
yep.
I had that in my head, but I forgot to mention.
get some sunscreen and an umbrella and get ready for a day in the field. So,
Yep,
and
10 o'clock, middle
and,
school field.
I move we adjourn.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Hank, do you approve?
Yeah. Yes.
Sassy, unmute yourself.
They-
I'll come
they
back to you.
signed off already.
Okay.
Where's-
John?
Aye.
All right, Ginger,
Aye.
and I approve as well. Thank you very much, and we'll talk next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Aye.